Hey dudes, and welcome back to the Bantz. As always, I am your host, the Bantz, and here we are once again, another Monday, another beginning of the week. So you know what that means. It is time for our first what's happening in fashion for the week, so let's just get right into it. And first up, as always, we have our headlines for the day. And starting us off, Gosha just showed off his fall winter 2018 lookbook, so let's talk about it. And before we begin, for those of you who don't remember, after his previous season showing off his last works, Gosha had put out this huge announcement that he was no longer doing seasonal releases, but was instead dropping releases whenever he felt like he was ready for it. So going into this lookbook, my assumption was, of course, that now that he had been able to take some time off, now that he wasn't on such a hectic schedule, he'd be able to put a little bit more time and effort and creativity into his pieces in this lookbook here. Turns out, however, that wasn't the case. Now, don't get me wrong here, I don't think this collection is necessarily bad by any means, because just looking at some of the pieces here, the materials and the quality of the designs seem to be up to par with anything Gosha's ever done before. And there actually were a couple pieces here that I somewhat enjoyed as well. I think that the inclusion of some of the Burberry check pieces was very nice, and I even think he did some really nice jobs with some of the graphics and some of the all-over prints we saw here as well. And I do have to give a little bit of respect to Gosha here for being able to take this genre he's just been so enveloped in, this Slavcore, if you will, and being able to still, to this day, pull out so many new and fresh ideas that don't feel exactly the same as they have before. But even with all that said, this collection here still falls pretty flat for me. And let me explain why I feel this way. It kind of goes back to his announcement a couple months ago. The fact that he was pulling back on doing seasonal pieces and focusing more on putting out pieces when he was ready. Now, I have no problems with this business model. In fact, I actually prefer it. And if I had to do a clothing line such as this, I'd probably do it the same way myself. But with all that said, if I had to do a clothing line like this and I had all this extra time where I could put more effort and creativity and design into it, then I would be doing that. And I don't really see that from Gosha here. Even though, yes, I did say that some of his designs still felt refreshing for the genre he was in, but the fact of the matter is he's really not stretching any boundaries here with all the extra time he's had, which kind of leads me to a lot of questions here, because I feel like there's some kind of ulterior motive for this. Is it the fact that he really just doesn't have any ideas and he's completely run out, and it's taken this amount of time to literally put out the pretty much the same clothing he always has? Or is he trying to go for an absence makes the heart grow fonder type of approach, where he's still really being embroiled in this genre, doesn't want to see it die, and in doing so has decided to pull back on sales and merch in the effort to keep this genre alive for as long as possible without people seeing it every couple months and eventually growing tired of it? Or it could just be a different reason entirely. Unfortunately, this collection just leaves so many unanswered questions that I know we will never actually get the answers to. But at the very least, when it comes down to it, the bottom line on this collection is that for the amount of time he's had to put it together, it really just isn't satisfactory for me. But if you guys have a different take on this, please speak up. I'd really like to hear some opposing ideas from my own about what could possibly be going on with this collection or Gosha in general. Alright, and in our second headline of the day, brand Helly Hansen is suing Off-White for copyright infringement, and all I gotta say is this is gonna be a good one. You see, a long time ago, we're talking 1970, literally almost half a century ago, the brand Helly Hansen released one of their technical base layer pieces, which they called Lifa, and it looked a little something like this. And it really shouldn't take more than a glimpse to look at this and see exactly how much it looks like somewhat of a similar brand that's popular nowadays that is kind of notorious for stealing ideas such as this. Gee, I wonder what brand we could possibly be talking about. But in all seriousness now, this is where the lawsuit actually gets really juicy. You see, if Helly Hansen actually wins this lawsuit, it's going to lead to three things. One, monetary damages to the brand for everything that Off-White has done. Two, the permanent barring of using this logo in any future products by the brand, which, I mean, come on, that pretty much means that Off-White would be dead. And three, the destruction of any clothing with this logo on it, which means that any past archival pieces, any current pieces, and any future pieces go into the dustbin. So as of right now, that's all the information we really have on this lawsuit, but don't worry, if any new information comes out, of course we will definitely be covering it here. But that just leaves one last question I have for all of you, and that is there any way I could possibly start a GoFundMe to help pay for Helly Hansen's lawyers here? Because God knows I will give every fucking possible cent I have to get rid of this stupid fucking. Alright, and with that, let's move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, Selin Cinar showed off some of her newest illustrations. Honestly, these are just fantastic. If you're a huge fan of really graphic pieces with some really meticulous details, these are definitely worth looking into. Then Katy Ann Gilmore also showed off some of her newest drawings, and I just absolutely love these. I love the different use of perspective here, mixed with, of course, the very heavy use of pattern. And if you love these things just as much as I do, then these are definitely worth checking out. And lastly, Yamaguchi showed off some of her newest paintings, and even though a little bit more different than what I usually show on here, I think the heavy use of graphic patterns once again, mixed with kind of the more cartoony silhouettes, makes for some very interesting pieces. And once again, if you're just a lover of art in general, definitely worth checking out as well. Okay, now moving back into our fashion section for the day. First up, brand Blackmerle showed off their newest pieces from their Spring/Summer 2019 lookbook, and I have to say that I'm very, very interested in this collection. You know, hold up a second before we get into this. I would really just like to give a shout out to all the newer, younger techwear brands out there trying to make a name for themselves, such as Blackmerle here, just because the whole concept of techwear has been pretty set in stone for a little over a decade now, and seeing some newcomers come along with some new ideas, new designs, new aesthetics, really enjoying it, and shout outs to all of you partaking in this. But moving on to the collection at hand here, I do have the same complaint I had in our last video when talking about another new tech brand, Sever, and that is that photos really just don't do techwear justice. I can't tell the quality, I can't tell the detailing, whether it's good or bad, how good the materials or bad the materials are based on photos, because you can't really capture techwear in photos, unfortunately. But even with all of that aside, just kind of looking over this lookbook, I am really hoping that the pieces here are up to snuff when it comes to quality, because the details and aesthetics are just fucking phenomenal. And you just know that me saying that is something very special, because how many times have I said that about any South Korean brand before? At first glance, this collection might seem a little bit inspired by, influenced by C2H4, which in my opinion is good, because the last C2H4 collection was just amazing. But Blackmerle here has done a very nice job of pushing themselves away from association by adding so many little details or add-ons or accessories to really give them their own unique flavor in the fashion space. And really, I can't emphasize enough that when you look at these add-ons, when you look at these details, when you look at all the interchangeable parts on some of these pieces, it's just fucking mind-blowing. Like, there's just so much going on in these pieces. And I mean, when we're talking about techwear, that always tends to be somewhat of the case, but just this collection here is so far above and beyond what I see in most standard techwear. It's just incredible. Like, it's just fucking incredible. For a brand that I haven't heard about till now, I am just super excited to see this collection come out, to hopefully see people get their hands on it and actually really enjoy it. Hopefully it's really high quality, and at the very least, if you are even the semblance of a fan of techwear, definitely check this out. You will not be disappointed. Then brand Elhaus showed off their second lookbook from spring-summer 2018, and although not as good as the first, I still really enjoyed this. Now, I do have to say that once again, even though I don't hold this lookbook in as high of a regard as the first one, that's just pretty much impossible for me, because if you guys remember the first lookbook from spring-summer 2018 from Elhaus, that whole collection was pretty much grail tier. So of course this one just wasn't going to be as good. Unfortunately, lightning doesn't always strike twice. But even with that said, there's still a ton of gorgeous and amazing pieces here as well. Once again, we see a very nice hybrid of workwear meets techwear meets Japanese detailing in many forms, ranging from highly maximalized to a little bit more subtle and toned down. Plus we see the addition of not only more toned down pieces, but a lot of what I would consider even basics in this lookbook as well. But that doesn't mean they're by any means bad. Everything here is very well chosen, very well detailed, and all works together cohesively in my opinion. So once again, if you are a fan of any of the genres I mentioned before, even throw streetwear in there a little bit as well, and hell, if you're even just a fan of men's fashion and haven't checked out Elhaus yet, just go do so. This isn't their best work, as I've said before, but even so, it's still miles and miles ahead of anything in its price point. Just go check it out. And lastly, Moncler finally showed a more in-depth look of their Noir collaboration as part of their Genius collaborations, and it's just as amazing as you'd expect it to be. Now, I'm sure some of you have realized by now that yes, this is in fact a women's collection, even though this channel is mainly dedicated to menswear. We will occasionally show off some stuff that's worthy of looking into here and there, so if you want to skip over this, I totally understand, but if you are just a fan of fashion in general, then please stick around. Alright, now moving on to the collection at hand. For those of you who didn't know, Noir means black in French, and obviously there's a ton of that in this collection here. And just like many of the avant-garde designers out there, Ninomiya has taken this concept of black and kind of collected it down and turned it into something truly wonderful by showing off different patterns and materials in silhouettes while maintaining just one color. And I think the craziest thing about this collection, aside from obviously the clothing of course, is that unlike a lot of other avant-garde designs that maybe you've seen across the internet, there is another factor that Ninomiya has to factor into this collection, and that is that he still has to make it feel like Moncler, and he definitely pulled that off here. Even with everything going on, you still get the shininess, the sleekness, the puffiness of the jackets that so many people have come to know Moncler for. And being able to do that while keeping everything crazy yet refined and maximalized yet clean, and doing this all in just black, just fucking incredible, man. Yes, this is just women wear, and no, none of us can wear it, but if you are a fan of fashion in general or fashion design, this is so worth looking into. Please just check out all the images in this collection. And finally, let's move on to our articles for the day. And first up, Highsnobiety put out a nice little short documentary on the man/woman trade show, kind of going over the history of it, some of the ideas behind it, some of the brands that show there. And if you've always been interested a little bit more on kind of the exhibition side of the industry, then I'd definitely look at this. Highsnobiety also put out a very nice but very short history/overview of Raf Simons and some of his design work. So if you always wanted to know a little bit more about him and why he's as popular as he is, I'd definitely give this a read. And speaking of some of the other interesting brands on the market as of now. Highsnobiety also did a very nice overview on seemingly everybody's favorite brand as of right now, and that is advisory board crystals, which we have also talked about on this channel a couple of times, and I can only guarantee we'll talk about it a couple more times in the future. But if you do want to learn a little bit more about this kind of higher end streetwear / contemporary brand that puts crystals in their clothing, then I would definitely check this out as well. And with that, we come to the end of our second What's Happening in Fashion for the week. As always, I hope you guys have enjoyed. And if you want to read any of the articles I talked about today or see some of the photos I wasn't able to include, I have linked everything in the description down below. And if you are new here, then welcome. We do these What's Happening in Fashion videos twice a week, usually on Mondays and Fridays, plus another occasional video here and there. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, if you just have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to talk fashion in general, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I am always willing to talk fashion. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching these videos and supporting my content. I hope you all have a fantastic week ahead of you. And as always, until next time.